Give me a minute because we have new financial data from the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. And that is the source of this data, right? This is what the Russians are telling us is going on. And since they are telling us very little about what is going on, all of this data is suspect, in my opinion. However, things are so bad that year-on-year revenues, that's what you're looking at here, year-on-year revenues of the Russian Federation, tax revenues, are down 6%. Down 6% in May over last year. Now, you combine that with an inflation rate of 10%, that's an effective loss of revenue of 16%. And you will note the general trend of this chart. Let's take a look at something else here. Because we know, right, that federal tax revenues for the Russian Federation on oil and gas products make up about a third of the budget these days, maybe closer to 40% depending, but at least a third of the budget, right? That's in orange here. Oil and gas tax revenues. Look at them bottoming out like we have never seen before. As China reduces its purchases by 13% last month. Consistently, we are seeing the world buy less and less from Russia. In general, exports of Russian goods to North America, South America, Africa, and Asia are off by between, on average, 10 and 11%. While at the same time, Russia is importing more goods, indicating a dependency on the rest of the world to stock its shelves, an increasing dependency. Now, here's what's really interesting I think we should pay attention to. You see this blue line here? That's non-oil and gas revenue. And here's the interesting thing about that number, is that over the last 2 years, as oil and gas revenues have consistently dropped, the Russians have told us that their non-oil and gas revenues have consistently been going up, or at least until lately they did. You'll notice that there is an inverse relationship, right? When oil and gas revenues are high, non-oil and gas revenues are lower. When oil and gas revenues fall, non-oil and gas revenues increase. How is that possible? How is it possible that in a war economy driven by federal spending, not by the creation of a consumer economy or consumer goods or anything that will invest in the long-term economic growth of the Russian Federation, there's none of that here. How is this number constantly making up the difference in the budget? It can't be. They're cooking the books. They've been cooking the books for at least 3 years on this, since they stopped giving us that non-oil and gas revenue data. Just the final number, not the sources of where it's coming from, because there's nowhere for it to come from. So if I'm right, and that's the case, then the economic situation inside Russia is far worse than even these charts would lead you to believe.